Had to sip that Baja Blast like a fine wine. You thought I was playing games? Nah. Nah. No. So what we're going to do is we're going to play some Tekken 7 in a minute here. Matter of fact, there we go. Here I am. So we're gonna play some Tekken here in a minute, alright? But, sheesh. Close that, because that noise is annoying. I'm gonna keep the Discord open in the corner here for when we get our homie Big Richard Lizard Man up in here. So that being said, let us do the damn thing. Hey, it's Big Richard Lizard Man. Big Richard Liz. We're not playing Mortal Kombat, we're playing Tekken 7. So let's play some Tekken 7. I will admit that I have much less experience at this game than any of the other games that I've played. Probably, honestly. Whenever you're ready, Big Rich, I'm already in the Discord call, so what I'll do is whenever you want to join the Discord, I will adjust the microphone levels and probably turn down the sound in the game. If you want to like let me know in Messenger or something privately. Sipping that Baja Blast. Let's keep my whistle wet, you know. Let's see, how do you do the Fisherman Slam? I know Brian Fury's got to have this Fisherman Slam.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7.
Where's Brian's dumbass? There he is.
Brian Fury. Kazuya Mishima.
I almost spilled my Baja Blast. But I didn't. Yo.
Test, test.
Alrighty. Does hold on, let me open my stream actually, and
Yeah, I guess I can't watch the stream at the same time because there's a delay.
so I can see if the microphone
You're saying you need to lean away from the microphone to inhale?
Yeah, so that when I sing the vocals, I can properly the deepness of them, the godlikeness of them. What am I doing right now? What do I? Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm a little dizzy from the lack of oxygen from all the jazz sax solos I've been doing.
Guy like you? Dedication to the instrument?
Oh man. I can't even watch on my phone. I'm pretty sure the levels are good.
Right, so you're 100% this is coming through on the Twitch and whatnot?
Let me get Wayne in here just to get us super. Bump, 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 Wayne. Fade. This game, that's what I'm trying to. Okay, Wayne's in here. Alright, Wayne's in here now. I don't know if this game has bonks. That's what I would like to discover.
Can he,
You gotta talk some, so
yeah.
I'm gonna turn the game music volume down.
Fucking... Yeah, I'm just on my phone here, and I wish I could adjust the volumes of Flick.
I guess I gotta go back to the main menu.
Can you hear me, Kev?
I hear you.
Word, I had to... So I'm hoping that my own adjustment... So there's a delay, but I can at least see the visuals of the stream and, like, see whenever people drop in the chat. But there was no way within the Twitch app on my phone just to view Twitch. Yo.
Yep. Can you hear me? I can. Are
hear you.
Okay, cool. All right. Wait, no. I'm pretty sure your voice is coming through.
Yo, Fade to Black, can you comment if you can hear me?
You can hear him, right, Fade?
Man, I'm pretty sure that Brian character is voting Blue Lives Matter with a bandana like that on.
Yeah, right. This is unfortunately who I'm probably going to end up maining, though, unless I can...
Just swap the bandana out and we all good, man.
Yeah.
Let's just get that fucking...
I get the Punisher logo one.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I swear... I'm trying to remember what battle rapper I saw reference Hihachi in a round.
Hihachi.
It might have been Arsenal.
All right. Fade, are you in here still? Let's look at the sample combos. Okay. Okay. All right. I can kind of rock with Brian Fury. Is that a natural combo, though? What? Okay.
Yo, so what's a good word, man?
Yeah, I can hear you. I only have one viewer right now, unfortunately. Let me see.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty sure you're... Like, I'm 99% sure, but I don't want to just start talking if I can't get, like, confirmation that you can actually be heard. Let me... I'm just going to turn... I'm just going to put the stream on my PC, and... Cool. All right. Okay, all right, I'm ready. It's set up now. Say something?
Check,
Okay,
check.
all right, I'm ready. It's set up
Sibilance.
now. Say something?
Check,
Okay,
check.
all right, I'm ready. All right, cool. Set up
Sibilance.
now. Say something? All right, good. So your audio is good. I might turn you up a little bit louder than me. On switch. Let's see. Can I do that? Yes, I can. Alright, I have increased your volume, so...
Check,
Alright,
check,
we're good
check.
to go. Cool, sweet. Let me pull a look at the sample combos. All right, so I guess we could start by talking about because I haven't actually watched the entire like Nick Cannon thing. I don't really want to do that. I don't think. Have you watched it yet?
Okay, so by watch, do you mean the conversation he had with the rabbi?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen that. I know he did have a conversation with the rabbi. I heard about that. I was just talking about like the initial conversation where he was like talking about how like black people were.
No, I gotta confess, man, like, and my privilege is showing here, but like, much as I love well, especially, you know, it takes a nation of millions to hold us back in fear of a black planet, but I just, you know, I always knew ever since I discovered Public Enemy from like getting the metal and then hearing about their connection and then, you know, allegedly using LimeWire as a teenager and get like, whoa, like
Allegedly.
these beats bang. Yeah, I was like, and then reading about what Professor Griff said in the 80s, I think it was more in like the PLO era at the time. I don't know, man. Like, I guess it's the kind of thing where I'll read about it, you know,
Yeah, I
and
feel
wince,
that.
but yeah, sometimes you just don't want to hear the words like
I totally understand that. It's not really a
in audio
privilege thing
form.
because it's like definitely from like even like from my perspective, like it's one of those things where like a lot of the times people will send you shit like, "Yo, have you seen the police did this to a black person or whatever?" And it's like, nah, I don't think I really need to see that. Like, it's
Yeah,
cool to
like
be
you definitely
aware of it.
believe that you definitely believe that police brutalized a person of color.
Yeah, right,
Like
right.
like
Totally believe it.
that's yeah, hardly
Yeah.
a far-fetched thing.
The only reason I asked is because I haven't seen it either, so I didn't really want to talk about that like in specificity, but just like how much it sucks that like fucking because we've had that conversation before about like the weird anti-Semitism that like fucking like in conspiracy theory like 15% shit and like Nation of Islam kind of shit, like a lot of the shit that Farrakhan said, and
Oh
like
yeah.
some of the weird shit that Ice Cube, and that was weird that they put it like that, like in Straight Outta Compton. I'm sure you saw Straight Outta Compton.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll admit that, you know, Farrakhan, I also have a lot of apprehension into reading about because on one hand, here's a man who's like hugely inspired, you know, so many black artists, it seems like, especially in the
Oh
world
yeah.
of hip hop. But yeah, there's like this virulent anti-Semitism about it. And like, again, I'll cop to having some apprehension in terms of like diving into that shit. Um,
Yeah, I wasn't like gonna say like a anything super crazy because I'm not familiar with anything in specificity that he said, short of like being aware that he's gone to like conferences and stuff with actual, like white supremacists and stuff, because they
Oh,
seem
see,
to think that their interests align. You know what I mean?
that I didn't know, man. But like,
Yeah. There's that kind of weird shit.
yeah. Um, yeah, that bit in like Cube. I mean, honestly, I think No Vaseline was pretty whack for that back then. Not that I'd ever defend Jerry Heller as a person, but
Yeah,
like, you know, I mean, I've said this to you. I've said this to our mutual friends of ours. Like, that dude sucks because he's a shitty capitalist. It's not because of
exactly,
his ethnic background.
exactly.
And and I'll also be honest, man. I don't know the reason for the history of Jewish people on the come up in terms of like the corporate side of the American music industry, but I will say that my understanding in terms of the filmic equivalent is because, especially way back in the 30s and 40s, when you had German Jews, from that film industry who'd been completely deprived of it by Hitler's government and who had to fucking flee,
Right,
um, and then thusly taking their skill sets to Hollywood, oftentimes because they weren't allowed to work anywhere else, so they kind of had to do their own thing.
right.
And multiply that by a multitude of decades, and the fact that especially Ashkenazic Jews benefit from white privilege, and bam, there's your I guess if you want to put it ignorantly, industrial dominance. But so I'll be honest. I gotta, for the sake of my own kind of defensive capabilities, I guess I gotta read up on the record industry aspect of it. But
Yeah, because I'm unfamiliar with that, obviously. I am not like a super, like, neither one of us is like crazy. We don't need to know like industry moguls and stuff like in the recording industry, basically. But like, I've always wondered if that was even necessarily true, or rather, it's one of those things that just because there's those specific encounters, that people extrapolate from that, in much the same way that like they extrapolate their experience that's like necessitated through communism as being part and parcel to someone's ethnic background, because that's the only straw they can reach for, because of they've been like propagandized to believe, to not see the thing. You know what I mean?
like, what's an example of what you're pointing to? I think I get what you mean. But
So like let's say with like sports, or like an NFL team, if there was a coach that was particularly shitty to a player, or there was like maybe like two or three coaches that were, I guess that's not even a good example, because NFL coaches are pretty like public figures, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily possible to be as, because music is a little bit more obscure, like you can have people, because it's just sound, you can have people that are behind the scenes that you would never know and never see. So it's like, the point I was trying to make more so is like, is there even that many Jewish people? Like, is there really a Jewish industrial dominance, to put it ignorantly, like in the recording industry, like outside? Because you've already explained how like the film industry came to be how it is, more or less.
yeah, I mean, well, just offhand, I'm thinking of like Rick Rubin, who is an atheist anyway, but or actually pretty, I think, long time Zen, and definitely long time, not identifying, but definitely vegan, both vegan and straight edge.
I believe you
But
can
then
be. You don't necessarily, like, not to cut you off, but like, I consider myself like an atheist Christian. Like, I was raised in a Christian background, and I still have a lot of those, like, more or less. Like, I celebrate Christmas and shit like that, but I definitely consider
Oh
myself like a
yeah.
hardline atheist.
Oh, and I mean, I'm an agnostic Jew for sure in terms of like,
Oh, I guess like,
you know,
I guess I consider myself agnostic for sure. I can't call myself a hardline atheist.
yeah. but like I feel you. I'm just saying, like, I can definitely think of a couple names in the music industry, like high up, but yeah, offhand, no, I don't. I
Right.
don't know. If anything, that's something to dig
Like
into more, I suppose.
like
But
even especially like obviously in like in metal, like I can't think of too many. I feel like that would not even like to be like let's play the game where we like try to hunt down all the Jewish people like mentally. That came out wrong.
yeah, like, I got you though.
Or we try to think of as many Jewish people as possible. But
Yeah, not in terms of like especially more extreme stuff you and I like.
yeah,
Not all that many. Although, did you know that Paul Masvidal is Jewish
Paul Masvidal from
from Cynic? Yeah,
Cynic. Oh yeah. No, I did not.
yeah. I I don't think he's been like practicing per se, but I think he's at least like half Jewish.
Right
And
on.
I'm pretty sure my boy Steve Flynn from Atheist was like raised in a intermarried family in
Right
that
on.
regard too. But definitely other than that, it's death metal leans pretty fucking Anglo
I was gonna say,
oftentimes.
yeah, metal is pretty waspy.
Well, I mean, shouts out to I mean, I don't know if I want to name him because I don't want this to sound like a call out, but dude who jumped in the stream the other night and was like, "Hey, you remind me of this guy in that band." I was like, I don't know if you saw me. I threw the emoji, like the side eyes emoji. I was like,
I mean, you heard what
I
I
don't know why
said.
he's saying that.
Yeah, the guy's really, really cool, and I knew he probably meant well, but yeah, that was an interesting moment, um,
Yeah,
to say the least. I feel like that comes from the barrier to entry, like as a artist. You know what I mean? Like for hip hop, you could probably pretty easily like under $1,000 or maybe under $500 come up with a pretty decent setup for like beat production or if you want to record like a microphone and stuff, like record your own vocals and stuff. But like decent drums are typically pretty expensive. A decent guitar like to gig with, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. No, there's definitely economic factors with that sort of thing.
Like for DIY shit, you could probably get a decent PA for under $500. And there's also that bizarre far right element that we're aware of. But it just occurred to me, I was just thinking like it's strange to me that exists because of how guitar music originated with broken gear that was like considered something you would discard, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you
Like
mean in terms of like really really early blues musicians, that sort of thing?
yeah, like the distorted guitar sound, like like the origin of the distorted guitar sound was from the amp falling
Sure.
off of the truck or whatever. So it's like an amp that's busted, something that's considered worthless. And now that specific sound is something that people have to pay thousands of dollars to achieve.
Sure.
It's interesting to
Yeah,
me.
definitely. I mean, and you can extrapolate that to the digital versus analog argument in terms of frequency and clarity and all sorts of other shit like that. But yeah, should we get back to the anti-Semitism, anti-blackness related?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I got off on a
No,
tangent
no, no,
there.
no. It's all good, man.
But fuck, it just made me think of like I forget what show. I think it was like the Hewleys. It was like DL Hewley. Back, I have no expectation for you to have ever seen a single second of any episode of this show, but there was like an episode where it's DL Hewley in the '90s, so of course it's gonna be pretty fucking provocative. But it was there was like a Jewish family that he was like there was just like some weird like I don't know. I for some reason, and it might not even be as bad as I'm trying to make it seem, but for some reason I remember seeing that when I was a kid and like knowing about the Holocaust when I was a kid and that kind of shit, and like thinking like, wow, like that's really fucked up. Like why would there be like, first of all, why would black people treat Jewish people that way? Because they should definitely understand above all. But like, why would Jewish people treat black people that way? Where you know, I can't even like even accurately seriously describe the scenario, but there was definitely like the plot, like the main driving plot force, like motivator of the episode was the antagonism between DL Hewley and this Jewish man, and it was just like very bizarre to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, off the top of my head, and granted, you're right. I'm not familiar with D.L. Hewley, but there's a number of historical political factors in my mind that kind of arise thinking about like the general question of like why is there that divide?
Right. Yeah. For sure.
One is kind of the obvious umbrella thing, right? Is that certainly Ashkenazic Jews really benefit from white supremacy, like,
Yeah.
or at least, excuse me, white privilege. Like, invariably in a capitalist society, especially if you benefit from white privilege, then in some way you are going to inevitably benefit white supremacy. But there's that. And you know, add this to the gigantic book of things I should know more about. But
Same.
Just what happens in terms of like white flight, as they call it in American cities. I think there were instances of that white flight being Jewish folks.
That makes sense. In the just like in the neighborhood where, specifically in regards to like Baltimore, Liberty Road is like one of those places where you can see straight up the divide where the neighborhood changes over between like Randallstown and Pikesville. And granted, they're both pretty affluent areas. Like Randallstown is considered to be like, as far as blacks goes, this is what I'm told. I haven't bothered to really research this with any degree of like sincerity. I just took it. I respected the person who told me this, so I took it at their word. But like, Randallstown seems to be like the new like Harlem Renaissance more or less area, where it's like a really affluent area, one of the most affluent areas for blacks in America. But it's definitely not a huge amount of overlap between that place and Pikesville, which is a town that's been historically like Jewish, to the point where a lot of the more white kids had a different name for that place that I won't obviously repeat.
Mentioned that. Yeah. I wish I could say I was shocked, but
yeah.
Sorry, please continue.
But there was that, and you know, Baltimore is one of those very segregated, very redlined types of areas, and I'm sure there was definitely something to do with that, because one of the areas on Liberty Road. I'm sorry. I should be. This was a bad idea on my part. I'm like trying to learn Brian combos and have this like serious ass conversation at the same time. I'll chill for a second. But what I was trying to say is, on Liberty Road is an area called Park Heights, and I have to let me Google that really quick just to make sure I'm not getting streets crossed up, because I do so much driving that it's very easy for me to confuse areas in that area for certain other areas.
Word.
Northern Parkway. Reisterstown Road. Yeah, so Reisterstown Road actually cuts through like Park Heights like area. Reisterstown Road also cuts like Reisterstown Road runs parallel to Liberty Road, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So it's Park Heights specifically was like, you can tell by the name Park Heights, you would think that it's like a really really nice like affluent area, but like at least in the 90s, Park Heights was like not very, it was like a very very black area. There was a lot of white flight from there. It became Redline and stuff.
Yeah, you cut out for a sec there, man.
Yeah, I know, I was taking a sip, sorry. But yeah, it's interesting that even in the midst of what we're going through right now, there's a lot of the buy black owned stuff, and that's all, like that should be cool, but I don't necessarily see a whole lot of mingling amongst those two social groups, despite how close in proximity, literally physically, they are.
Well, okay, but let me ask you this, because this is the other, honestly, more than ever obvious thing I was going to point to, which is like the connection between Palestinian and Black liberation.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Honestly, unfortunately, I feel like a lot, and it's not even necessarily black people specifically or like blacks' fault. Just as Americans, in general, people don't necessarily view things internationally. So, as a consequence of that, I feel like a lot of people like that doesn't really play into their view set of that. What I think a lot of the anti-Israel sentiment comes from might, in the case that people even think like of Israel like in that sense at all, might come from a place of anti-Semitism in terms of like the tropes that we've already talked about, obviously, like in hip hop, of like, Jews running everything and being the secret hand that like manipulates everything behind the scenes, whatever. What's up, Human Roadkill?
yeah, on that protocols of the elders of Zion shit.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be necessarily that deep. It's just that a lot of that surface level dog whistle shit is on mainstream media in this country, which is crazy. It's not like, it's crazy when you think of it in terms of like historically, like as obviously more, maybe perhaps, I don't want to say necessarily left leaning because I don't even want to politicize it, but like knowing the context of where that kind of shit can lead, it's bizarre that we have that level of dog whistling happen just on mainstream media, like on Fox News or whatever, because a lot of black people actually for real do watch Fox News, which is strange.
Yeah,
But but also not even just there, but sometimes in certain liberal circles, I would say that
in liberal circles.
yeah,
Damn. Yeah, that is mystifying to me.
because there's like that weird cross pollination of, I don't know. People don't necessarily ask why they have certain bedfellows politically when it comes to that. You know what I mean?
Like, enemy of the enemy is my friend sort of thing.
Right. Like maybe like thinking specifically of like Nick Cannon because of how hip hop, it being specifically originally a black product and then being co-opted specifically by like white people, those two like specific social groups being the most, at least in America, the most having like the lion's share of hip hop. When you have both poor white people and poor black people like participating in that, which includes like blacks and Latinos, yeah. When you have that white supremacist shit because a lot of those kids probably have like family members that were in the KKK or whatever, and that's like not even to be stereotypical. That's just like the straight spit facts, especially for down south. Like a lot of that shit
Yeah.
is more common than people like to think it is, you know. And it's not to say anything specifically about them. It's more to say that American society specifically has a baseline level of white supremacy that is inculcated into its culture that is not really questioned and not really thought about. It just kind of is a matter of course, like the fact that you see white people like represented in media more than any other social group, that kind of stuff. But Shuggy anus. Hassan came in to say that, but yeah. So but when you have the intersection of poor blacks and poor whites, specifically those two, just those two special groups, then you can have that common thread of let's have that anti-Semitism, like his end of video.
Yeah.
And that could also apply to other social groups as well. Like, it even applies to like other black people, which is weird. Like, there's a weird antagonism between African Americans and black Africans, like in other blacks from the diaspora.
Wow. See, I guess I had the most general sense of something like that, but
Yeah, so like Africans have like a word, like especially I think it's like specifically Nigerians have a word for us, like akata, which is like it's basically just a reference to the fact that since we grew up in America and we've like it points out our privilege. So like all African Americans are like lazy, entitled, like a lot of it's fucked up because it goes in line with a lot of white stereotypes about us that like we're lazy, entitled, we don't want to get jobs, like we're stupid, not uneducated, you know what I mean? Like it's weird, it's bizarre.
man, yeah, that's troubling stuff, man.
And it's a lot of weird internalized anti-blackness, specifically just like can happen by accident, like in Nick Cannon's case, where it's weird that black people, due to sometimes, and I don't know if this is necessarily the case with Nick Cannon, but like I know this can be the case sometimes when we get deep into the Hotepri shit. But like sometimes black people want to be anything but just straight up niggas from Africa. You know what I mean? Like it has to be this grand divine, like, because, and it's fucked up because like our story is so sad, like as African Americans, like as our people, that our culture and our history and shit was destroyed. We'll never get that back. Like, you know what I mean? That you internalize some of the white supremacy that is taught, that whatever could have been that was like brought over, that was preserved, is like not enough. It's got to be that we were the original like conveyors of society to the rest of the world, like that like black people were the most important people in America, I guess, or in the world, I mean, not necessarily in America. So like people who like consider themselves Moorish and shit like that. So it's like they will say shit like Europeans brought homosexuality to black people because to try to emasculate blacks, like, and destroy black men or some weird shit like that. And like but it's got to be that they were like the original true Jewish people or whatever, and that white people had stolen that from them along with everything else that had been stolen from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes. And to that end point, or to that final, I guess, thing you mentioned, and how it directly correlates to like how the world of trouble Nick Cannon brought on himself by posting commenting what he did in that podcast.
Yeah.
you know, speaking of my privilege showing, like that hasn't necessarily been something I've thought about recently, especially as someone who doesn't,
I was gonna say
you
it's not
know, who is a
necessarily,
Jew.
it's not privilege at all. Yeah.
Well, no, but isn't it that like it's like, oh, well, wait a second, man. Like, yeah, like Jesus, however he existed, if he existed, was definitely not a white dude, and you know, Jews having originated in terms of the biblical history anyway from Middle Eastern countries, right? Like certainly the Old Testament and the Exodus out of Egypt and making the pilgrimage to the Holy Land and what have you, the 40 years in the desert bit, like those people weren't white,
Yeah.
and I get that. I guess the in the broadest sense, the question that comes to my mind is like, okay, so in the thousands of years of people of all backgrounds spreading out over the earth and countries as we remotely know they being established, um, societally speaking, uh, what happens in terms of physical appearance and genetics and skin pigment, right? Because like I'm sure that could I trace my own ancestry back to, you know, one the year 1 CE? No, but I could go back to at least sometime in the 1800s, you know, in terms
Yeah.
of my German and Russian ancestors. So like, how did that, like, I'm sure there's been some broad science in terms of the study of how human beings spread out across the continents, and how does that intertwine with the, you know, genetic and physical appearance aspect?
Right. And I was gonna comment on that because it's like, in my opinion, it's more important like the impact necessarily of like the culture, because you and I are both agnostic, so like we don't necessarily take that piece of literature as a literal historical text. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it wouldn't. But even if that were like, barring that, even if it were like the truth, then like what you were saying would be the case. Like people wouldn't all look like that over time. Like people would spread out all over the world. There's all kinds of other biblical shit about like, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. We're all like, it's, which is also in that text is the fact that we all happen to be spawned from literally one fucking family at one point in time. So like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the historical accuracy of the Bible is definitely not something I ride for. That's or you. Sounds like, which of course I'm
Yeah,
not surprised.
it's for
Um,
me. It's like with those things. I guess which I can elaborate on more or less earlier. As far as the cultural thing, it's like for me. And this is why I guess I had to admit I was agnostic and not necessarily a hardline atheist earlier, is because for me stuff like that is important because of its like magical value. Like I still have like my Bible from when I was a kid, and like if my grandmother gives me a rosary and stuff, I'll keep it. But I'll also have like other weird superstitious items like grave dirt and stuff like that, because like I feel like that's stuff that works in the real world somehow. Like it has like weird like, and it's like I'm gonna talk about it. It's gonna be weird, like I'm talking about like a video game or some shit like that. But it's just like it has like magical fucking energy that has an effect in the world. I don't know how to explain it, but I was taught to believe that because of like the customs and shit that I have been passed down through my family, and that's like the most important aspect of that. So that's not necessarily something that you would be able to tie specifically to someone's like genetic makeup regardless.
sure. I mean, there's as Fiddler on the Roof goes, you know, there's the tradition aspect to it, um, and then there's just kind of the general like gray area of religion and spirituality for everyone is and really as on an individual level, right? Which is I'm gonna slightly tangentialize here, but bear with me. Like you know, it may shock you to know that I'm sure you know hella people just with the scenes and you run in folks you know, but especially me, not only living in fucking Seattle, but the area of Seattle I live in. There's a whole lot of astrology, like, you know,
Yeah.
people love that shit. And forever and ever, I was like, oh, why? Oh my god, like more fucking Leo memes. Oh, it's Cancer season. Like, each their own. But man, I'm getting the bombardment of this. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, who admittedly is someone who takes it seriously enough. Like, you know, she enjoys it and stuff. Um, I would assume she reads horoscopes, at least that sort of thing. But really, the way she put it was, she, and I'm paraphrasing here, but in a nutshell, not that she takes it, you know, to the letter seriously, but that it's really just another mechanism that one can utilize to parse the absurdity of the world.
Yeah. I
And
definitely get that.
and yeah, and I think there's something to be said for that, like within some reason, you know, just like I don't, I guess I more than ever, however, generally, I get why I don't like organized religion and why other people don't like organized religion, but I also,
Yeah. In my opinion,
paradoxically,
not to cut
appreciate the
you off, I was gonna
importance of
say,
it.
in my opinion, like organized religion is what leads to that intersection between like hegemony, like which it doesn't always manifest as like racial hierarchy, but at least in America, that's what I believe. A lot of organized religion is.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah. Um, but just how, you know, bullshit those inevitable um that inevitable progression towards hegemony, um and let's be real, war and oppression and dominance over and over
Right.
and over again in the history of this planet, but not paradoxically the importance of belief for a lot of people, because the universe is batshit, like
Yeah.
straight up. And I certainly value science more at this point in terms of really getting down in the weeds. Like, well, why is it so batshit? Why is there an amazing pink manta
Nah, it's
ray
the
that
Baja Blast.
somewhere off the coast of Australia that I want to like be deep bros with? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that stuff is interesting. On a very, I don't want to say dry level, but a much more maybe materials word I'm looking for. Like I don't need that explained away by a mystical text.
Right.
But um, a celebrity that I won't name because he's had sexual assault allegations.
Yikes.
But he was once asked this question. Unfortunately, I think this is still very a valid response, because he was asking this column like, well, what's the necessity of prayer? Like prayer seems like bullshit. Like da da da. How do you validate it? How do you validate that you're being heard whatsoever? Like what is there to possibly get at? And what this person pointed to in response was humbling yourself and acknowledging the vastness of Earth and the universe and existence. And, you know, not to be too, like, liberal about it or something, but I think that's pretty universally important.
That makes sense. I could see that.
It's, you know, yeah, I'm not much for prayer myself these days, but obviously I tremendously value humility.
Yeah.
And keeping that sense of it, even if prayer is not the method channel by which you do it,
That makes sense. A
is
lot of sense.
relevant. Yeah, yeah,
I would also see prayer also maybe as like how a lot of I don't know if it's necessarily like an Eastern type of thing, but definitely maybe like involving meditation. Like I would see prayer as more akin to meditation, where along the same lines as like humbling yourself before the gigantic chaos engine that is the universe, but like kind of focusing on an intention. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
because a lot of people pray like for stuff. That's what I've noticed that just from growing up. Hell yeah, pray about Taco Bell. I'm praying for Taco Bell. We'll pray on them. Like that's what people do. People pray like from my religious background, like which is like black Christianity is very very bizarre, but like when you're praying because something is like prayer is essentially the analog to luck. You know what I mean? But it's not luck because you can't call it luck because there is the desire to believe in a higher power, which I believe partially like is biblical in nature. Obviously, we're already talking about religion, but like something that will bring deliverance from material conditions. So that's part and parcel to like prayer. And trying to have like a connection with God to like try to find signs from God to like do stuff or whatever. But also like you know, straight up like witchy shit, like stuff that people would not admit is not very Catholic, we'll say, but like praying for like sick people and stuff and like I don't know. Prayers is well, I understand prayer, but like black Christianity and their relationship with prayer and black Christianity is bizarre to me in terms of it's kind of like a cultural Stockholm syndrome to me. Because I would hate like because I hate Catholicism conceptually, like obviously like haha, edgy teenager who listens to DSI and Cradle of Filth and shit, obviously, but like, in a literal sense, like Catholicism conceptually was used to justify a lot of obviously both anti-blackness and anti-Semitism, but like the church itself, like the church itself as in like the institution like the Vatican and shit has engaged obviously in both of those things. Yeah, shout out to my cousin Zine. It's called Black People Should Not Be Christian. It just sold out, but I'm sure he'll have some more if you'd like to go buy it. I can provide a link in the chat. But the actual Catholic Church themselves have done like a lot of insane, like disgusting shit worldwide. Hello, Metronome. So black churches, right? So black churches specifically like the institution of Catholicism has destroyed like literally a lot, like so much of African like culture and like African American culture, I guess. But the role of the church culturally is like super crucial to African Americans.
Like on one hand, so much culture and it seems to me like communal unity has come from the institution of the church in black communities. But at the same time, it has those like immensely like to a T colonial roots.
Oh, absolutely.
Am I getting it?
Yeah, it's almost like soul food kind of, I guess, where it's like it's stuff that was scraps that was given to us that was supposed to be as scraps, but became a lot of like staple foods or a lot of people's what you would call like comfort foods, like foods that they grew up eating and like is considered crucial part of their culture, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I didn't eat that kind of shit growing up. I had chicken nuggets. I had nuggies. But I need to remember to block more in this game.
I was gonna say the getting reverse clappage vibes versus watching your MK matches.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Um,
Catholics are accustomed to being imperialist trash. Yeah, and you know, like the WASP class that we were just talking about earlier, which is like, and that's what I wish that like, that's what I feel like is, you know how with conservatives they'll sometimes run right into the point, but like refuse to see what you're talking about. You know what I mean? You can explain, like I feel like you should be able to explain to a lot of these people, like, it's, if you're looking for a class to blame, it's absolutely not the Jewish people. Yeah, good game, Kevin. I'll play you again in a second. It's just like I'm trying to have a conversation at the same time, and you're clapping the shit out of me, and I actually want to have a cool conversation, so I gotta like focus on the conversation and get this point out real quick, and then I'll hop back in the game with you. But so anyway, what I was saying, like, it's definitely not Jewish people. Like, any class of Jewish people, I feel like that is, at least in America, in terms of specifically this country, if you're looking at it through that lens, because like I said earlier, I feel like not a lot is looked at internationally, but like the WASP class are definitely the people that, they're the people that set this country up, fucking did everything here, set it up for them to specifically be the ones who, like, the big, still to this day, the largest political demographic is like evangelical Christians. You know what I mean? Like, they're the largest voting bloc. Um, yeah. But we're so far removed from them at this point that, you know, Donald Trump is president and stuff, but like, it's still like, dog, like, why do you, like, you're so close. You're so close. You're starting to read between the lines and see that all these industries are just mechanisms to extract creativity and value from blacks and Latinos and people of color, and create wealth for whites. And you're starting to see all these mechanisms, like for the prison industrial complex, and, you know, imperialism worldwide. Maybe even if you're starting to think in terms of like international class struggle, maybe even a little bit, you're getting the slight taste of that Kool-Aid is trickling a little teeny bit into your, you know what I mean? You're getting just the slightest taste of that delicious wokeness, and you're like, you just land on Jewish people. You know what I mean? It's like, nah, Jewish people. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at, Metronome, is that it's not a black and white thing. It's like yeah, it's, you just said it. It's not a black white thing, it's a rich and poor thing. But that's what I'm saying, is these people get to the, like, you got to figure a lot, like people like Ice Cube and like Nick Cannon are like in a crazy bourgeoisie class, right? Like, they have, like, these are people that are worth millions of dollars. Like, granted, they came from poverty, so they understand, like, having come from that. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've also seen Straight Outta Compton. Like, Ice Cube understands the police state, like, in America. Like, he knows how the police interact. Like, he understands anti-blackness in America for sure, or at least
but drawing the connecting line to capitalism is just not, it's not the step,
because they've
right?
made so much from that, right? Because they've been, everything that's around them has encouraged them to believe that the reason why they've made it to where they are, that opportunity has been made by capitalism. So they're thankful for that, but it's too far, like, kinda to say, to like ask the question as to why the material conditions that they were born in were the way that they were in the first place, to make it so that they had to become extraordinary in whatever way that they were. to have a chance at like the kind of upper end of American society, because there are still people that are like insanely way richer than Ice Cube could ever hope to be. You know what I mean? But I guess asking that question goes too far because it makes people uncomfortable, because like it gives you kind of a sense of, maybe it's a little bit of a sense of survivor's guilt that kicks in conjunction with the fact that you are constantly having positive feedback. You're in a positive feedback loop with capitalism, right? You're constantly seeing things that are trying to convince you that capitalism is awesome while it's fucking you, right? And so the rationale for that is to try to maybe perhaps like be like, it's not this issue, that the relationship that I have to capital and the relationship itself with how we see owners versus the owned, or private property, that type of thing. That relationship itself is not a problem. It's necessarily just who is at the top of that relationship, right? Or how much of that power can be exercised, maybe. Even if we're being generous and saying that people don't necessarily want to be in charge or want to be at the top of this particular pyramid. Because I feel like growing up in this society, like the same way I think about how I and a lot of other people, obviously in America, how you become indoctrinated with specifically like Christian values when you grow up from like a baby, like literally you're born into that society. It makes me think of also like that relationship to hegemony, where maybe there are people who either because they have a lack of education, or their education was poor, or their education had significant amounts of propaganda involved, where they believe that the hegemony is good. It's just that different people should be in different levels of like social hierarchy.
Based on like,
Yeah,
so
for
can you
sure,
elaborate?
Hassan. Yeah, there's always a scapegoat. Yeah. So, like, it's not even necessarily that I have a relationship politically with, like, communism or socialism or, like, anything like that. I just kind of have principles that, like, poverty should be optional, like, which is weird, like, to put it like that, but to elaborate more or less on that, like, if you necessarily have, like, religious values, like, you're a monk or like a nun or a priest or something like that, and you believe in like taking like vows of poverty and living a specific lifestyle in relation to your dedication to your religious faith or your that particular like vocation, I believe you should have the ability to do that. But like in terms of poverty as in generational poverty, I believe like that's something that should be abolished, and that can only be accomplished by the elimination of the current capitalist system, because you cannot, like, the way that American society is set up, like historically, even if the most farthest left like idealist had his way and we had a socialist or like communist structure installed in America, you would still need to have anti-racist coalitions, because anti-blackness and like having disdain towards people of color is baked into the cake, so to say, of American society, just as a first world nation, and like the way that we think about other countries internationally also. So
Straight
like
up. Straight up, man.
So I believe that like poverty should be optional because that's the only way that you could really negate the impact of that reality. Because if you have no ability to affect the material conditions of another person, then it really doesn't fucking matter if you hate them just because they're brown or black or whatever, right? Like, unless you like get a fucking gun and go kill them, obviously, like that's fucked. And there's coalitions now to prevent that, and there should be in the future. But what I'm more concerned about in the immediate, obviously, is, you know, KKK in the police department, homeowners associations, that type of thing, where you are literally manipulating the structures of society that people need to live and to survive and to just literally just vibe. Like, if I want to just literally just chill and vibe, I have to interact with these structures. And people who want to see me dead are the people who are in charge of these structures. And this is what a lot of like liberals, I feel like, well, not necessarily liberals, but like classical liberals will say, like people who say that we don't live in a racist society or that institutions themselves aren't racist, like they don't understand it because they think that because there's no signs that say no colors or whites only hanging anywhere, that we live in a post-racial society, and that there are just individual like cases of racism or anti-Semitism. But
yeah, that they're the outlier, not the norm.
Right.
Like, I made through my band's Facebook page around the time the George Floyd uprising started, a adamant statement, but one that especially, you know, comparatively among the folks you and I roll with.
I'm gonna definitely.
One that
you can't metronome. That's like saying you can have Christian Satanism. You can't do that.
No. The one commenter, and I don't know if this was the one time we played in Spokane years ago. By the way, Eastern Washington might as well be the South, as much as people want to think of Washington State as like
Yikes.
Being Seattle, and only Seattle.
I would like you to elaborate on that later, but go ahead.
So I don't know if this one commenter we got on this post that was like, it was essentially clarifying, one, we're vehemently like pro Black Lives,
right,
and two, like especially as a band made up of Jewish and queer people,
right?
You know what I mean? And finally that the name has nothing to like is I mean, honestly, I hate my band's name and I won't mention it here, but I expressed worry that maybe it gave the wrong sentiment about things being so much better back then, because that's never been a thing, especially for people of color.
And that's I was gonna say, and that's something I wouldn't even think about, and that might be my privilege, but I didn't even think about that until you just said that. But go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the one commenter was some dude from Spokane who goes, name one American law that's racist.
Parent terror, brother.
And I just straight up threw the block hammer down, because like, you know, should I have ideally taken time to be like, look, man,
it's not your job to do that. That's work though. Like that's actual labor.
But I agree. That's really valid, man. But Spokane being a shining example of maybe not having the best education system. I mean, this is a part of the state that is known for meth. Like full stop, dude. Me and my bandmates, one of whom at the time grew up in Spokane. We're playing this festival. It's like a Memorial Day weekend festival where like the local kind of like the equivalent of Baltimore City Paper out there. Get some money together.
I'll address that in a second, metronome. I'll address that in a second, metronome. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Asa.
And no, it's all good. And they get a.
I'm sorry. Fuck. Go ahead.
It's whatever, man. But it was just this local festival where, you know, bands from the area, bands from that part of the state, and maybe like a handful of bands from like Seattle proper get paid to like drive out and play. And like as we're pulling up, I see this kid getting braceleted, and these cops like hoisting a gigantic bag of meth, and they got this dude on the hood of the cruiser. Like, Spokane is meth town, period. So like,
I see.
yes, that would be labor on my behalf, but like, how the fuck at this point is someone going to learn that otherwise? And I'm not trying to like make the case that people of marginalized backgrounds in any situation are required to like make the same consideration. I'm just saying that capitalism has led us here, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like look
Absolutely.
at the state of Texas and what they've done to history books. Like if history is that generationally altered, it's not just written by the winners, it's written by the racists.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So how is this dude's mind gonna get like pulled out of the matrix otherwise if some jackass in a band from Seattle isn't like, well, think about the institutional aspects of this, my man. Think about what the 13th Amendment has manifested, like what its loophole has crucially led to, and like how many industries benefit from it to this day. Like,
right.
Anyway, so I guess I went off on a bit of a tangent there.
No, not. It's totally relevant.
Totally relevant. Well, but what I'm trying to say is I see what you mean in that, and I used to be like this too. Like especially I think up until, God, at minimum midway through college. But just like, that can't be racist. It's not saying anything explicitly that people of X background are bad.
Right.
So, ergo, it is not racist. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
like that's not what racism is anymore. You know what I mean? Like that's not how it manifests itself.
No, and when you have a member of, I'm embarrassed, I should remember specifically what part of the Nixon administration, but do you remember this interview in the last couple of years where this guy from the Nixon administration was just forthright about what a bullshit farce the war on drugs was? He's like, well, we know we couldn't just like make it illegal to be a hippie, so we made sure to get heroin and involved in those circles so we could just arrest the hippies and suppress dissent. And we did the same thing with black folks and weed.
Oh yeah.
Because we couldn't make it illegal to be black, but
yeah, that's like, you can't explain that to people. I recently did this whole thing where I was like, this is work, because I was like, this is work, because I just told you it's work, but I was like, I recognize that in certain cases, like you said, this needs to be done. Like that dude Cal Chappelle, like, I'm not just gonna be a dick and like just go right to insulting people. If people demonstrate a kind of a genuine desire to learn about these types of things, then
yeah, that's what good faith arguments are, right?
Right. So
like it's the intention,
right?
If someone's not looking to troll you, then it might theoretically, and I emphasize theoretically, be worth your time to help this person benefit from your own insight and knowledge.
Totally. And that was my mindset, absolutely. And I had shared, I forget what it, he shared something that was about slaves. And, or no, it was like this long ass thing. It was something about it ended with Trump as a good president or something like that. It was like all these like truths. And one of the things on there was like, no one who's owned a slave or been a slave is alive or dead, or I mean is alive today. And I'm like, no, like this is propaganda. This is what they try to tell you to minimize the impact of what slavery is. First of all, what qualifies under the blanket term, the umbrella of slavery, first of all. Second of all, to make it seem like it happened so long ago that it's not worth talking about now. Anybody who brings it up is crazy or just trying to make excuses, so to say.
Yeah, self-victimize or something.
Right. It's funny you say that because I posted a thing about how my grandmother literally was a slave. She picked cotton from sun up to sundown. She was 8 years old. You know what I mean? Like, and linked one of the articles about how slavery existed in this country, even in terms of what they think of when they say the word slavery, like black people and fucking like burlap fucking like t-shirts and shorts and shit, like filling sacks full of cotton and living in shacks and shit. That existed in this country until like the 60s. And that's aside from when we get into the 13th Amendment and what slavery became and what it is in the modern day. And I'm explaining all this to them, just like trying to make like a concise as post as possible as I can, obviously talking about this and just like a Facebook comment. I'm like giving this personal anecdote about my grandmother and like just like bearing all this personal experience and trying to like hit them, and also linking like links so that they know I'm not like bullshitting you. I'm not trying to just like give you shit. And his wife commented back with like, "Wow, you're really married to the victim side, the victim mentality, huh?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then in another post, I'm like trying to explain blockbusting and redlining and like even just aside from the 13th Amendment and modern day slavery, which is what it is, like how people are disenfranchised and are disadvantaged due to their shitty access to housing and housing vouchers, and like because I had my family history happens to be in the military, how shitty blacks in the military were treated historically. Like my great grandfather's fucking draft card has a giant fucking Negro stamp on it. You know what I mean? Like, and the other thing I didn't realize recently, just as a quick tangent, was I didn't realize the level to which there was specifically anti-Filipino sentiment at the time, because one of the options on the stamp was like white, Negro, Filipino, Mexican or something like that. I think was the fourth one. But anyway, or other, I think it was like something like that. But I have to pull that up. I'll pull that up on stream sometime. I'll like black bar out so I don't like, I guess I can't really dox someone who's dead, but I'd rather not reveal a whole lot of information about myself. But
maintain what privacy you can.
Right.
Sure.
So like I'm trying to explain all this stuff to this stranger, I guess, this white dude that's just like the I'd realized at a certain point that it wasn't necessarily about him trying to learn and like be open to my experience or like be educated, because he had messaged me immediately. I forget what post it was. There was some post, because that's another thing I do that I like, I'm sure a lot of other people do, is like go in comment sections on like Fox News and stuff on Facebook and just like get in arguments with people. It's just fun. It's just really fun. But he was someone that was like, nah, we shouldn't be like this to each other. And I agreed, like, yeah, we really shouldn't be like this to each other. And so he sent me a friend request and messaged me and said that it was good that people should exchange ideas. And like, I'm sure like viewers, you're listening to my accent. So like a lot of people have told me that I have like a surfer accent, whatever. Like, the area that I grew up in was like predominantly white. Most of the people that I grew up around were white people. So like my proximity and my immersion into white culture, quote unquote, is very deep in terms of maybe not necessarily being a part of whiteness, especially when we talk about my like legal history, my relationship with police and housing. But when we talk about like schools and that type of thing, for sure. Like I had white friends, like I had rich white kid friends when I was growing up, basically, suffice to say. And I had a point. What was I originally talking about?
We were talking about emotional labor and
Oh right. Oh
the
yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah. So that's what I was getting at was that having had a lot of these. So going to decent schools, obviously you would make rich white kid friends, and your parents are going to meet their parents, and you're going to meet their parents. So two things happen. You kind of internalize the subsurface level blanket anti-blackness depending on the level of racism of these white people, right? So they might tell you things that like you're different from other blacks, or like you're so articulate, or you're not really black, you're Oreo, you're really white, you're white on the inside, these types of things, right? And you might not have your mileage may vary, you know what I mean? I grew up in a southern state, so that's my experience. That not being the case, you meet specifically older white men who might be particularly liquid in terms of wealth that they may have inherited, or they may have a personal business or whatever. You have these wealthy, older, middle-aged white men, and yeah, your English is great. Yeah, Jesus Christ, I can't even imagine being told that. But you have these white men that seem cool, right? They like rock music. They like they'll show you records. They'll play, like when you come over, they'll show you guitars and stuff. They'll take you on fishing trips and stuff with them. But your relationship to them is them essentially imparting to you cultural erasure, in the sense that they're trying to imprint themselves upon you, like on some Get Out shit. Like, not in terms of literally. For anyone who's never seen that movie, it's a horror movie about like putting a piece of your brain into someone else's brain and like taking their body over and putting your personality into them. Not in terms literally of that, but in terms of like, in the sense of the fact that a lot of black culture was intentionally destroyed, like in terms of what was seen as useful to carry into the future. That's also done in the modern day with sentiment towards like hip hop music, for example, or quote unquote thug culture, because that's always what is the talking point of the right wing when they want to dog whistle, right? When they don't want to say eugenics, basically, when they can't say that black people are just naturally inferior, and that's why they happen to be socially, like in terms of monetary value or capitalistic sense, at the bottom of the ladder. That's because it's a personal choice because of black culture. That black culture is the reason why black people are overwhelmingly killed by police, because of thug culture. They blame culture for why there's one parent households for blacks, instead of the fact that black men are insanely over policed and over incarcerated. And when you point out that blacks are over policed and over incarcerated, they blame that on black culture too, right? Because those blacks had to be thugs, otherwise they wouldn't have had any interactions with police, because they exist far away from the police, like battlefield, right? In the suburbs, out where police rarely come. The police only come when someone calls 911 because somebody's fucking kid overdosed, or someone else heard someone's neighbors yelling at him or whatever.
The police are, and it's a different role, right? Different role relationship, because the police, for obvious reasons, play more like private security out there, or worse, versus the oppressive arm of the state.
Right, exactly. Because you try to explain that to them too, like even in their own neighborhood. Like, if I broke into your house, even if you have $1,000 alarm system, it would take the police like an hour and a half to get there. But if I broke into fucking whatever goofy Rite Aid was in your fucking town, the police would be there instantly if they weren't already chilling there. Because the relationship the police have to you is much different than the relationship that the police have to capital.
Yep.
Yes, exactly, Hassan. Police are protectors of wealth. And in the case, specifically in America, with black people, police are enforcers of segregation. Because when you look
Straight
at
up.
things like, you know, down to like who gets tickets, like traffic violations, the number of traffic violations. And when that got pointed out in the DOJ and they fucking embarrassed the FOP, they tried to act like there's some kind of logical reason for that. Like they can get some kind of team together, like, we're going to assign a task force to figure out why so many blacks have
God.
disproportionately received tickets and are affected so much in traffic stops, and we're going to work to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. Like, okay,
Yeah,
dude,
self-investigation
Yep.
always works. Like when the CIA reassured themselves that they were not responsible for the crack
Yep.
epidemic.
Hassan and I caught a DWB on my birthday. I'm sure you remember that. That was crazy shit.
Yeah.
That would not have happened if we were two white dudes in that neighborhood, for sure. First of all, that neighborhood, like I was saying earlier, is the affluent black neighborhood, so it's naturally over-policed. So the fact that the police were there to even get us in the first place should tell you something. But what they pulled us over for is something that would never, and ticketed, and it just, the whole process, yeah.
Whack. Yeah, also to take a quick step back to what you were kind of talking about earlier in terms of dog whistling in regards to black culture, like, I mean, I'll just point out the obvious, but it still needs to be said in terms of just the bigger picture intersection of history and wealth. I mean, like, culture doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a reaction to one's surroundings,
Material
and
conditions. Hell yeah.
upbringing. Yeah, material conditions. That's a way better way of putting it. And when you look at the history of black people's treatment in this country, there's nothing that doesn't make sense, but in the worst way too, because it just fuels the propaganda machine, and hardly just the right wing one. You know, I'm
It's
trailing off and
unfortunate.
becoming a bit verbally incoherent, but you know what I mean? They have it both ways.
Oh,
Like,
no, yeah, I was going to say, because it's unfortunate that, like, a lot of culture ends up being, like, even black culture, like, a lot of American culture in general ends up being somehow filtered through or a reaction to, like, necessarily American culture is a relationship with white culture, unfortunately. Like, whether it's a reaction
Yeah.
to it or a product of it. You know what I mean? In the
Yeah.
modern day. Because, like I said, like, everything was fucking destroyed. And now what we have is what we have. And it's been that way for, like, a few hundred years, I think. We'll say. A few generations, to the point where what was lost, like, there's no, like, getting to the point where, in terms of restorative justice, while there's, in terms of, like, bringing that back, or something, like, creating something of equal value, is a completely abstract conversation that's, like, it's not even really a conversation. It's just emergent to reality in terms of what just people in America produce daily. But, like, in terms of, like I was saying earlier, the answer to the ongoing consequences of the actions that were taken in the founding of this country, but also throughout history and ongoing today, obviously with the Trump presidency and a lot of this, the the stuff you've seen, it's been interesting seeing the acting out that we've seen, especially most recently. Like leading right up to Trump's first election was dope, but now that he's about to get elected again, and people feel, let me say, I'll say this: the atmosphere, I feel like, at least for a lot of conservatives, is that he's staying in office. So you also have a lot of acting out now because there's they feel like they're about to take another victory lap, and you know, these are the people that are in charge, the people that when you say Black Lives Matter, they have a problem with this and they have to say all lives matter or what have you, because they, at this point, we can't give people the benefit of the doubt and say that they're saying that because they think that Black Lives Matter all are one organization and they're Marxists or some of them, blah 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 blah. Like, it's been too long and we've seen too many examples of why that's bullshit.
Yeah, well, and what does it say about somebody's disposition in that their instinctual reaction to the phrase Black Lives Matter is that it is a negation of a statement?
Exactly.
It's an affirmation.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, right.
It's like that obviously to us both and our friends and so on, but like, what does that say about all of these factors we've been discussing throughout the course of this country's history that come to inform someone's worldview as such? You know what I mean?
Right. And that's
like,
why I was
they're that ready to take up the pitchfork and that the response is phrases like "back the blue."
Right. And that's what I was saying is that if you give these people, like, these people first of all exist, like, and there's a significant portion of them. We see what's going on today. The only thing to do to alleviate that is to take away their power to vote, to have people killed basically and robbed in the streets, like to take away their ability to use the state to do what it is doing to people, and literally to just not, like, I'm sure a lot of people, like, especially a lot of the celebrities that people say don't give a fuck about their communities but do community outreach all the fucking time, there would be, like, you would have different areas of charity and stuff that wouldn't need government subsidy, even if they were convinced that they didn't have to somehow use the state apparatus to fix a lot of the issues in the lower income areas, which actually absolutely needs to happen in my opinion. But even if that were not the case, like, there should not be the ability for people to vote for there to be international plunder, but also just like within this country, like, to vote for people who enable people like Elon Musk and like Jeff Bezos and these kind of people, like these people who simp for the most disgusting, like, it like baffles the mind thinking about, like I really wish I could live for like 500 years to read history books about this period of time and about like people on the internet who were just like existing in a completely different reality of like historical white supremacy and simping, like fucking like bootlicking for hyper capitalists and fucking racist police state officers. You know what I mean? Like, they'll be like, yeah, these are people who like worked as like Walmart greeters for actual minimum wage, or like had like coal miner family members or whatever, or like people who were not by any means rich, but because they so strongly believed in that American exceptionalism so hard, they were willing to allow, first of all, these people, these hyper, like these millionaires and billionaires, to exploit their labor as a consequence of the economy that they existed in, because they were so scared to lose their job, because they were afraid to lose their health care or even just their way to pay the rent, but also because they believe that they could be that person one day, right? That
Yeah, and they end up voting for their own interests because
yeah, you vote against your own
so many
interests.
times. Yeah, so just even looking at how tax breaks inevitably always screw over people that
I'll see you,
are
son.
anything less than wealthy.
Yeah,
Uh, with I would assume the idea that, well, I'm in this big old race to, like, you know, live my own American dream, make my own financial grand success on my own terms. So when I get there, I can have that benefit too.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I imagine, maybe I'm wrong in speculating this, but it seems like there's a sweetening the pot aspect of it.
Oh yeah, it's gotta. That's the well. That's what I was getting at. Was the only answer is and yeah, that's what I was gonna address earlier, Metronome. I'm sorry I never addressed your point, but now is like a great opportunity to dovetail into that, because that's what I was just going to reiterate, is the fact that you actually cannot have, especially not now, the current system as you have it with just UBI or something like that. And I know you had like, so like UBI has its own thing that people associate it with, but I'm just using that as like a catch-all term now for, like, every month the government is giving every citizen a like stipend of, we'll say what you were saying, $20,000 to $30,000 a year. All those factors that like the pro capitalists and stuff talk about is all stuff that like absolutely is true. That would like make inflation skyrocket and a lot of other things, because capitalism itself thrives on cheap labor, first of all, but second of all, as I was saying earlier, we have a serious anti-blackness and like racism issue in this country in terms of its historical culture into the modern day. And when you have a system like of democracy like America does, and a cultural like minority setup like America does, where you have what you're seeing today, like with, you know, housing situations and stuff like that, like that doesn't get fixed by just giving people more money, essentially, because like I said with the libertarian boomer meme, like stuff will just cost more, but also you'll have the issue with, like, say you have a house that needs plumbing, but then you have a plumber that like doesn't want to work in a colored person's house, something like that, which is absolutely something that would and does happen every day. Like places and areas that are like lower income and stuff are not shitty by accident. Like that's the one thing that is like everything is not how it is by accident. Everything is how it is right now on purpose, 1000% on purpose. And if you just add like pour more zeros into the system, like essentially if you wanted to just add more zeros to my bank account, then you could just add more zeros to everything else in life, maybe even some more zeros, because it would be an excuse to say, well, look, these people have so much more income. Like, I don't know. Capitalism cannot, like, you can't do it. racism makes it not work, and the nature of capitalism itself, by it requiring cheap labor, will always perpetuate racism because it'll be easier to just subject that class to the bottom class that has to do all the shittiest, hardest labor for the least amount of money, or will produce all of the most valuable things in your capitalist system for the lowest cost, right? So where you have these record executives in hip hop who are making money in certain cases off the literal death of some of the artists, right? And the incarceration and glorification of the suffering and like mental illness and the just general shit fucking conditions of like black male youth, right? Profiting off of that. A lot of these rappers are going to jail, they're getting shot. They're like, they have to be where they're at because like they still have people where they are, and they want to be close to what they know a lot of times, right? And also, if they get, leading into what I was also going to get to, if they get shitty deals, sometimes they have to get into money trouble and stuff. Like Lil Yachty and these other artists where they fucking, you hear all the time about artists who spend all their money or get fucked over in their deal because their people above them or whoever they signed to or whatever is making X amount of dollars more than them or off of them. And then they find out that their lawyer also is their label's lawyer or whatever, as we've also know. So then their lawyer is not even going to help them fight legally. So they have to get another lawyer to fight their lawyer and also fight their label. And you get yourself trapped in the shit. And it's a bunch of other stuff that is involved when it comes to the relationship, like I was saying, with the concept like of whiteness per se and other minority cultures in America, because it's not even really just black culture. The flavor rate lately has seemed to have been like queer culture and stuff, and like trans people, which is really like trans and non-binary people and stuff. At least like the really poor and like shitty like attempt at like woke kind of like representation and stuff. Like, I don't know if you've seen there's like a Marvel team of like the new, I think it's supposed to be the New Warriors, which is even more gross to me because it like kind of pissed me off because the New Warriors is like my favorite team. But like two of the characters are actually called Snowflake and Safe Space, and it's like, I don't know, dude.
Are you kidding me right now?
No, dude. I don't. Yeah, it
What
would.
kind of Comicsgate nonsense is that?
Yeah, it kind of sucks.
Side note, I just read. Did you see that Jeff Loeb got outed as saying some awful anti-Asian stuff?
Ooh,
Like,
yeah, I did see that.
multiple occasions.
I did see that.
Yeah, straight up shut down this actor's storyline, and Daredevil showed up like, yeah, didn't take any heed when they were developing Iron Fist, and people were like, "Hey, man, maybe the fact that he's a white guy who went to Shangri-La back in the 70s, like, wouldn't play as well now. Maybe we should consider casting an Asian actor and, like, putting more thought into his story instead of adhering to all these age-old tropes." Anyway, I wish I could say I was surprised.
Right. That, and just like, was it, whoever makes Assassin's Creed, is it Ubisoft? It turns out
Ubisoft is all kinds.
Yeah, where there was supposed to be a woman as the lead character in Assassin's Creed, one of the Assassin's Creed games, and there was like a email or something that like the CEO or someone important with the company, I can't say for sure, but it was someone really high up that was like, the lead character needs to be an alpha white male, like in all caps and shit, and like made them scrap and change the whole game and shit. Like, that type of shit doesn't get fixed by just giving everybody some money. That's the whole point. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. because that those people will still be in charge, first of all, and they will just be like, oh, you just gave everybody a bunch of money? That's cool. That means I can pay my employees even less now than they were already fucking crying about suffering, getting working crunch and shit like that. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know. This seems analogous to mention. My bandmate has been a music instructor for years, and just a contractor as part of this nationwide chain of not, and it's not Guitar Center for whatever that's worth. It's a different one, but
I see.
basically he and his colleagues who busted ass week in week out and so long had for so long really hoped for benefits and like some form of insurance, and were finally offered it, but with even like, I think he said something like 33% less pay per hour taken out of their paycheck to accommodate it. So it would make that income source completely unfeasible. And
Yeah.
his choice would be either to like quit, or accept those terms because he couldn't stay on with the same contracting setup as now.
Right. We are flawed morons, and no, dude, that's the point. Is that if you eliminate the current system as we have it, like you allow people to just literally just vibe, like you. Though the one thing that you and I agree upon, first of all, you would have to eliminate the state in its current form, right? And you would have to recreate, and I don't mean that like, I mean that in a sense of like how people say defund the police, like not just like fucking instantly, you know what I mean? Because obviously that would cause probably a little bit of chaos at first. You do it structurally, piece by piece.
Yeah, and we'll have chaos already with that anyway, because please come please.
Right, exactly.
White supremacy group membership is about to go up, but
exactly.
It's about, like, you nailed it with the structural aspect. Number one, because it's like, where are we putting our resources, and towards what end are we putting in those resources? And when it becomes like, of course people don't want the system to change because it's wildly profitable to incarcerate, especially young black men. But second of all, there's of course going to be like, people keep going on about unknowns and, well, this was never proven to work. It's like, yeah, but how is that any? Of course, there's going to be some unknowns, but how is that any worse than what we already have going on?
Right. Yeah. I'm talking specifically about.
I see this as positive because you have to have that hope.
Yeah, B. Jarbo. Yeah, profits over life is really the concept of capitalism, like fundamentally. So, yeah, if you basically, I'm talking about wealth redistribution. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, we cannot absolutely not have like people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk like should not exist. Period. Like, the fact that Elon Musk's family made so much money like off of apartheid is like pretty fucking gross. Like, pretty fucking gross. You know what I mean? Especially his cavalier attitude, like internationally now, with him tweeting out, "We'll coup whoever we want" after securing his fucking lithium and shit for Tesla or whatever. Like, calm the fuck down. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, you can't have, like, if you think that people like that or a system like that is necessary in order for us to have cool, like, nice advancements technologically, I would point you in the direction of both the internet and NASA, because yeah, neither one of those things was like funded by some like crazy fucking billionaire who like had a hyper capitalist background where he inherited a ridiculous amount of money and has a bunch of workers that he abuses underneath of them because he union busts them so they can't even form a union underneath of them, because anyone who even says the word union in his fucking building gets fired on the spot with no unemployment, no benefits and shit. And yeah, basically, you have to take away these people's money because them having that much money, it's basically like if there's a person in the room starving to death and you're eating all of the food, there's like enough food for thousands of years in the room, but you won't let this person have any of it because you're like, nah, I have dibs on all of it. And you might even decide to share some of it, but just the fact conceptually that this person is starving and the paradigm is that you're expecting them to wait for permission to like not die, because that's essentially what we have right now, is that if you like die because you like are on the street and you like don't have health care or like you're underemployed, it's like just because you're like not working hard enough, dude. You just gotta pull
Yeah, I
yourself
was
up
gonna
by
say
your
too bad.
bootstraps. Yeah,
Should have worked. Should have worked harder.
you just gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And you know, if you like are a fucking like lead poisoned fucking like trans woman who's like parents kicked you out at age fucking 12 because they caught you in your room fucking wearing a dress or something, so you ended up on the fucking street and you just happen to like get addicted to heroin, like you could be fucking like Bill Gates one day if you just like work really really fucking hard, because the system is totally designed for people in the most vulnerable positions in life to just like, you know, your effort that you pour into whatever endeavor you have is directly proportionate to the funds that you get out of that, as we all know, because we all work really, really hard and we're all perfectly pleased with the amount of money that we make.
Yeah, and then, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's. I mean, this is another stupidly obvious thing to point out, but it's like the exception proves the rule.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right. The fact that you have to select this literal handful of people like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, whoever, like, while half of the country is about to be homeless in 72 hours, first of all, but significant parts of the world at large, because that's another thing that people like to say, is that capitalism has lifted people out of poverty. But like capitalism, like I was saying, one of my principles is that I believe that poverty should be optional, and capitalism kind of creates, like, along with white supremacy and stuff like that, if you have like apartheid states and stuff, obviously that's going to contribute. But necessarily when you have like hyper capitalist stuff like that, where you have basically, if you can inherit wealth, you can inherit poverty. And when you have generational poverty, that's kind of the opposite of what I would like. You know what I mean? I would like for people to not be, I would like for them to not be born in the shitty conditions. Like, I would like for everyone to have the same standard of living, conceivably. And that cannot be achieved in capitalist systems, because you will always require cheap labor and underclass people, and there will always be different tiers of access to things. Thank you for the like. There will always be different tiers of access to the most important things. So when we talk about things like healthcare, for example, or like housing, like there's no way for us to have something that would be what you and I would agree on, would be, at least in America, racial justice. Whether we're talking about like anti-Semitism or anti-blackness or you know, xenophobia or like anti-Asian sentiment, anything like that, there's nothing you and I would agree upon that we would call justice for those minorities that we would call capitalism at the end of the day, right? Like we're talking about the healthcare system, hopefully agree on the fact that we should probably not have the access to hospitals and doctors, those types of things, especially childbirth. We should probably not make that dependent on your access to that through your job, right? It's probably not a good idea. It probably has bad outcomes, especially for poor people, and it's bad for minorities when you think about the history of the country and who has been placed in the category of poor people historically in the country, right? So that's not capitalism, right? Because that's either a like at
Did
best.
you hear anything what I said?
No, I didn't hear anything you said.
Ah, damn it.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. There's some weird shit going on with Discord, I think. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, man.
No, that's fine. I was gonna say that, but also like that's the easy one though, right? That's the one that everybody agrees upon because so many of us, especially now, don't have health care, right? That's like the low hanging fruit. But the more complicated conversation, obviously, with all of the protests and whatnot happening now, is the police and the military, right? And obviously we have, when it comes to the international stage, the Democrats and the Republicans have very similar positions when it comes to imperialism, because everybody wants to make money off of extracting resources from impoverished regions and war-torn areas and installing dictators and doing classic America, right? Everybody
And
wants
defense
to,
contracting,
right? Yeah, everybody wants to
which
do
goes
that.
hand in hand with everything you're talking about.
Right. Locally, though, Democrats are very much differently from Republicans in terms of how we view just basic realities. At least within the system that we're calling the capitalist, like American government, like democracy, whatever. If I talk to a Democrat, it sucks that they they might try and like back the blue or something, but they think trans people are cool, or you know what I mean, a weird quirky white person like that, that like voted Hillary or something like that. But like you can't, there's no way you can compare that to a person that like thinks that you should be taking hydrochloroquine and fucking that black people have smaller brains because they have different sized skulls, and that Jewish people secretly grind babies up and eat them. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh my
there's
God.
no
Which,
way.
by the way, is a libel that's been around since like the dawn of anything.
Yeah, it's fucked up. But
Like, yeah.
those two are obviously not comparable. But that's why you have to have a system where the military is 1,000% accountable to the populace and defunded. Like, should defund the military, in my opinion. Defund the police and defund the military, in much the same sense. Obviously, it's not just like instantly tell everyone, okay, it's time to go home. Like, there's a strategic way to do that, and to obviously do restorative things in countries that we fucked. But the wealth needs to be redistributed, or like spread out, like spread out amongst people, and like that's not capitalism. Like, I feel like you have like a really serious apprehension, some more like left-leaning things, maybe more so as an anarchist, and I feel you, because I'm with that same thing, because I more so have an apprehension to large power structures. But like, I had to come to the realization that a lot of the things I would push for, at least in the more or less short term, pragmatically, are things that are like socialist or communist, dude. Like, especially in terms of like black struggles relationship with like Marxist Leninist thought. Like it's like the American propaganda is to have a serious apprehension to a lot of that shit, because specifically because that's the fucking kryptonite to this fucking corporate white supremacist shithole we live in, is that even if all those people are still alive and still exist, if we like set up that system and extra checks and balances in place in terms of like, honestly, for this country, straight up fucking like armed militias to deal with all of the extra salted like racist pieces of shit who wanted to take it to the next level after that happened. You couldn't like it would suck because America would be segregated. Like obviously there would be the areas where those people lived and like the rest of us who actually want to enjoy like life. But you wouldn't have like police killings. You wouldn't have a police system that enslaves people. Like you wouldn't even have the ability to bring any of that stuff back because the structures for the ability to make that kind of shit wouldn't even exist anymore. Like that's not capitalism. There would certainly be like a marketplace that still existed, and like that is in and of itself what would be like the thing that you're wanting is the thing that would flourish the most. Is like if people were freed up from labor, like if their relationship to time was not necessarily directly based on their labor, they would have time to produce art and like scientific things, and we would see like all kinds of like new music and new technology and that type of stuff. Like, but because people have to fucking sit in a box for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, like people aren't free to produce the types of things that you think are awesome and that you're thinking of when you're like you know what I mean? But yeah, capitalism and socialism can't be they're like capitalism can lead into one, but you can't really capitalism itself is a transition into the next thing from like feudalism, like peasantry and shit. Because to get from a fucking culture of like farms and factories to a culture that we have now of fucking like iPhones and fucking Teslas and shit, you kind of need capitalism. Like you kind of need the ability to amass and store and exchange wealth beyond a fucking ledger of how many fucking chickens you brought or whatever. Like, and the populace in general has to be of a certain level of education and capability beyond what a person, like if you were a king, it would seem like it would make sense that you would want to just be like in your castle and have everybody else be on their fucking farms and shit, but you would actually be way more rich if like you had a society where you were like ultra fucking rich. You had like billions of dollars that no one could ever touch. You own and run pretty much everything. All of the property is yours, and you more or less have the monopoly on violence when it comes to the mentality of the people that you're electing to rule over. Like, but you give them all of these social luxuries as well. Like fucking, you sprinkle in some fucking iPhones and Teslas and shit. That makes you way richer because then those people will produce more that you can then exploit, right? So that's capitalism. That's what we exist in right now. Is we have fucking geniuses that are born every day that fucking scan shit at Walmart. People that work in a factory producing things that they could never afford to purchase, or work in a store that sells things that they could never afford to purchase. You know what I mean? Unless they get some kind of fucking like loan system from the store that'll put them in debt, some goofy shit like that. But now I'm like, have you been talking at all, Big Richard Lizard Man? Has your mic
No,
been on?
man. My mic's been on. I'm just letting you freestyle.
Damn, damn. I'm just
No,
like
it's,
podding.
no. It's all good. I mean, I guess so. To summarize a bit on the whole, by reframing our existing, and I don't mean reforming. I mean abolishing and rebuilding.
Yeah.
But in terms of the intention, reframing the intention as well of our existing institutions towards something, towards structures with community oversight and participation, and
Absolutely.
towards restorative justice beyond instead of punitive justice.
Right.
And I will say that in terms of what form a military entity would take is definitely not a blind spot, but a perplexing area for me to even think about. My first thought is, I mean, to be obvious, a neutral one, a defensive one.
Right. Likewise.
I mean, it's exactly, related to factors you mentioned that we've had such a presence in the Middle East because of resources there, to name but one thing. Obviously, there's oil in Iraq, and I watched a phenomenal documentary about how there is apparently a area of Afghanistan, I believe, in a mountain range that is like absurdly riddled with gold and other rare minerals. So again, there's that tie back to capitalism, its emphasis on wealth, and the machinations at every level of how that wealth is acquired.
Right.
Especially through arms of the state.
For sure.
But so yeah, that's and all this stuff is hard to just to fucking discuss.
Yeah, that's true.
Let alone think through. So my family has died in the fucking old Democrat, and I'm love my parents though I do. I'm still arguing with them about the phrase all cops are bastards and like what people mean when they say that.
Oh, likewise.
And
same with my parents.
Yeah. And like my mom just recently was like, well, what about black cops? There's lots of black cops. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Just because one comes from a different background than one comes from a different background doesn't mean that person still can't support the structure put in place to benefit white supremacy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's cliche as fuck. I was gonna say it's cliche as fuck, but I always point out like Steven from Django Unchained, like, which is like really fucking extreme, like a really extreme example, and it's like kind of reductive and stereotypical, but like when you have a relationship to power that is not like you don't truly understand your relationship to power, it's easy to, when you have some, to abuse it and view yourself as part of the power structure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or do you mean? Sorry, do you mean like lose sight by virtue of your privilege and that power? You lose sight of that power essentially, and it's exactly
so,
it's bearing on others. That's one thing.
So like I feel like, and this is just like my personal experience, and maybe perhaps what I've like mileage may vary, and this is just what my bias and just like people that I've met, but like. And what I was getting at with like, so we amongst people of color, unfortunately, there's obviously we have like colorism and stuff like that, and there's internalized anti-blackness, and then in the diaspora there is I don't know, the word for it now escapes me, but like that disdain that I was telling you about earlier from like African blacks towards African Americans. And I feel like one of those things is like part of capitalism and like the class antagonism. There is a disdain for lower class blacks from middle class and like maybe even upper class blacks for like viewing them as like ghetto or uneducated or whatever, or like internalizing a lot of those stereotypes or carrying that same energy into a lot of their interactions, where like they move out into a nicer, maybe like what you would say like a white neighborhood, just for the school to like raise their child in that environment. But like one of the biggest examples I can think of is like Michael Jordan, who like infamously fucking hates black people. But like, you get what I'm trying to say? Well, there's like their cultural avoidance, where it's like kind of like how white people make fun of like people who live in trailer parks and stuff, like trailer trash and stuff like that. That like slur. That also exists a bit in like black culture. And there can be attitudes of internalizing also the paternalistic liberal culture that comes with, like I was saying earlier, that right-wing talking point of how black culture is the root of the problem, and the inability to really see the forest for the trees, in a sense of not hating the power structure itself, but hating black people for not just innately rising above in the context of the power structure, like Bill Cosby, like respectability politics type shit, like pull up your pants, fucking go to school, all this types of stuff. That's easy to say if you're perhaps from a middle class environment where, you know, if your parents were able to provide, if you even had both of your parents in your household, but even supposing you had a single mother or a single parent who like was actually able to provide for you a lot of the things that would enable you to, if you worked twice as hard to be considered half as good, escape into the suburbs. It's easy for you to say then that if you just work hard, then you can make that same climb socially, not understanding first of all that there are people, specifically there are white people doing way less and getting way more, white men getting way less and doing way less and getting way more, but also the fact that you and other people should be valued like way more than you actually are. And that can filter in a desire to be a police officer when you're a black police officer, because you already have that cultural aspect when it comes to class antagonization, or excuse me, class antagonism, not class antagonization, but when you have in class antagonism where you have a subtle disdain that you can't explain, right? If you hear someone talking and using slang, or they have like an accent, they don't speak what you would call proper, it maybe irritates you a little bit, because I've heard people express this sentiment sometimes where it's like, especially people that are in that upper class, like I was saying, where it's respectability politics. They want you to speak proper, they want you to be clean cut, they want you to have no tattoos, all the stuff that they think will low-key comply to what is the acceptable black person in society, and what they think in today's world is the paradigm of white supremacy, because white supremacy has become so soft nowadays and hidden. But also when you're a police officer, when it comes to things, when we talk about black criminality, and what is considered a crime in the current paradigm of American policing and legality. Especially if you've maybe even had family members who were in the lower class who were affected by these types of crimes. When you talk about like gang members or like drug dealers, these types of things, where it's entirely possible that these individuals were in this outcome by no choice of their own, because a lot of gang members end up that in like how a lot of people in the South have family members that are KKK members just because their father was, because their grandfather was, whatever. That can happen with gangs, especially when you're in such close proximity with all these people in these inner cities and stuff, where you get jumped into a gang or you're expected to choose a side amongst your friends or whatever, or your peers. Or
Yeah, I mean, this will show you how privileged I am, but what really opened my eyes in that regard recently was there was that fantastic Of Mikes and Men documentary, the 4-part Showtime
I haven't
Wu-Tang
seen
documentary.
that yet.
It's so good. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, just in terms of how comprehensive it is and how well edited it is. But they talk about it was a bunch of them talk about how the kind of the first job they had was there's a specific bridge off Staten Island in New York. I can't remember which one it is, but it was, you know, being out in the blistering summer heat slinging newspapers, and then lo and behold, it's the 80s and crack hits the streets. And like, what choice is a kid who, you know, maybe if you're Ghostface and you have two brothers who are paralyzed from just errant gunshot wounds and a single mom, like, and you're hustling to provide for your family, what are you going to pick?
Right.
Like, what's going to make you more money quicker and help enable you to help your family that much more quickly?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Selling drugs, like that type of thing. And also in terms of just like straight up gang, like culture, like thug quote unquote culture, like if you can understand how like a kid that would be quote unquote mentally ill would be someone who would want like be surrounded by people who picked on him, bullied him and shit, and like treated him like shit. If you could understand how that type of person would then want to take up arms and cause harm to the people around him, you can understand how a person that's surrounded by people who are part of a culture and will be violent towards you if you don't participate in that same culture, how you would definitely ingratiate yourself in that culture. Like just in the suburbs, there's peer pressure of kids who like pressure each other to drink alcohol and stuff like that. Everyone knows what peer pressure is. Like that exists, and like when there's involved, like you were just saying, the terms of the ability to provide materially for your family when you're stuck in a position through no like fault of your own, where you're stuck in this position of poverty. Like there's really no choice. Like people don't starve quietly. Like these types of conditions, like people don't understand that like sometimes you can be born into a situation and be in America, like financially, I guess we could say, in a situation where you have to decide if you want to steal to eat or do something illegal to not die. That's the unfortunate reality of America. And like you can either say that we should do something to address that so that we can actually have an answer to crime, which is something other than just lock everyone up, because obviously that's not working and has created severely bad outcomes historically for people. Then you just have to accept that people are going to continue to commit crime because, like I said, no one starves quietly. No one is just going to accept that, like, oh, I couldn't find someone to pay me to do some insane and inane random task for a certain amount of time that was enough to give me enough pieces of paper that I could trade for calories for me and my family members. Like, I guess now we just have to either wait for more pieces of paper to trade, to beg for other people for them, or like rely on the kindness of strangers. Like, no, not everyone is going to do that because there's not enough charity for everyone in the world, obviously. The fact that we have ultra rich, like trillionaires and billionaires, is a testament to that fact. Because if I had even remotely as much money as someone like Jeff Bezos, like, I would get to work immediately addressing the infrastructure of the country in terms of like roadways and mass transit. Not even just that, but also housing, obviously. Like, even before COVID, there's a fucking housing crisis in this country that was getting worse and worse, that was refusing to be acknowledged, obviously, by the right wingers and conservative leaning people. But if I had even like a fraction of that amount of money, and that's why you see a lot of these like black celebrities or whatever, like Jay-Z and shit, and these people like trying to amass wealth and like invest in their communities and stuff, is because we come from an environment, even if we don't understand the nature of the hegemony to a certain degree, like even if we don't question the nature of why we have to do this type of stuff in the first place, we still want to give back. Like, there's still that impulse to, they won't allow that he be killed. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He would totally be killed. Like because that's the real, that's like the nugget, like the hidden truth is that, like, the removal of those power structures is not conducive to these people because they profit off of keeping us in these disadvantaged situations. So, like, yeah, the fact that you even have that should tell you, like, Jeff Bezos is worth, he's going to be potentially like the first like trillionaire or whatever. Is that what is that accurate? I think.
I don't know, but I did see. Well, no, I was just gonna add that the salt in the wound of what you're speaking to in terms of just the massive disproportionate wealth at this stage of the game, so to speak. The salt in the proverbial wound is like the savior complex that all these fucking people have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, Elon Musk is like, nobody wants to acknowledge the sheer fucking hypocrisy of making the greenest cars in the world and firing one into space for the hell of it.
Right. Thank
Like,
you for the like.
just as one example, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I was also going to comment the fact that a lot of these companies, even with because the people who fucking bootlick for these ultra capitalists will talk about the money that they actually have donated to charity, but you have to always remind them that that amount of money is not even a fraction of the money that they receive in government subsidies, combined with the fact that they don't pay taxes. That's literally just free money that they get that they can afford to give away because they didn't earn it in the first place. It's just numbers that appeared in their bank accounts or whatever that is really which is also not even accurate because it's money that's extracted from us, you and the person who is watching this, the person I'm speaking with, me. Like, if you pay taxes, even if you don't use those services, like even if you don't use Amazon, even if you don't have Prime, Activision, even if you don't play video games, you've never played a video game in your life, you pay Activision, you pay these companies because your tax money from when you go to work, your taxes and stuff, your tax money is going to those companies in tax subsidies, and they are not paying taxes. They do not give money back into the tax system.
Straight up. Yeah, I mean, and you know, as a Seattleite, I'll say Bezos is and Amazon are prime examples. And man, when you just connect the very obvious, simple dots, especially with what's happened in the last few months here, I mean, nationwide, but Seattle especially is a flashpoint of police brutality, being uh, uh, the police being brutal against people protesting police brutality. Um, Amazon contributed, I can't remember if it was $250,000 or $350,000 to our mayor's election campaign, who, by the way, is a former U.S. attorney who made her name off of infiltrating anarchist circles. And
Oh,
also,
surprise, surprise.
well, if you know, dude, you know who she used as a CI was a convicted level 3 sex offender.
Jesus Christ.
Not to infiltrate an anarchist circle, but actually on a different operation that involved. I mean, it's a whole thing, but it involved exploiting the mental illness of a man of Middle Eastern descent. But this, yeah, the CI plant in that situation was this level 3 sex offender. It's Jenny Durkin is a whole mess of just the disgusting face of neoliberalism. But where I was going in the Amazon point is, they're giving big time 6 figures money to her campaign alone. And what does she do? Uses her power to immediately, like the first time a tax was passed that would have affected Amazon and other big corporations, it was passed unanimously in city council. She immediately held a recount to ensure, or not a recount, a second vote on it to ensure that it wouldn't win.
Wow.
Yeah, talk about getting your money's worth. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
Meanwhile, there's been a new Amazon, or it's now called the payroll tax count passed, and now I believe it's this Monday that the vote is going to be held for like the final vote on defunding the police 50%. So my hopes are high, but November is around the corner, so there's going to be a whole bunch of battles then too.
That sounds
like
hopeful.
Like literally, as an aside, the biggest electoral troll in the state is running for governor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Has it been?
Sorry.
Has there still been protests and stuff there?
Dude, literally every day.
Yeah.
There's a morning march. There's an evening march. There's multiple weekend events.
Because I don't trust shit I see, and I don't really have access to Twitter anymore that I got banned. So.
Well, there was. I mean, I can offline. I can give you some names on Facebook to.
Oh
follow.
yeah.
I mean,
you don't have to name drop anyone specifically here.
Well, no. Some are like in a sense public figures. I mean, Nikita Oliver, for one, is just. I mean, there's a reason that she is universally hailed as an incredible organizer and speaker. I mean, I think I was telling you about this as it was going on, but legit during like the first weekend of the George Floyd uprising,
he's talking about Seattle.
11,000 people marched with Nikita to City Hall, where the mayor was already trying, and the mayor's continued this, by the way, where she's meeting with members of the black community, and it's like people she handpicks who she knows won't completely clap her in a debate or conversation. Or sorry, I should just say dialogue. And this is, we know this because this happened firsthand. Like Nikita was informed of this after the fact. This is like in the first days of June, I think. Marches with 11,000 people to City Hall before this meeting, which had just heard about, goes in. There's a whole bunch of people from, like, yes, a whole bunch of black leaders, but a number of whom, including from like the NAACP, who were like, I was not invited to this meeting. Like, I heard about this, offhand.
Wow.
So there's that situation. She comes outside and says like, well, Mayor Durkin, if you really, come on. Sorry, dealing with the cat. She's like, Mayor Durkin, if you really have these intentions, will you come out and speak to the crowd? And she's like, yeah, I'll do it. And by the way, I'm watching this all go down in real time on an Instagram stream. And
oh, wow.
Jenny Durkin comes out before this crowd and very quickly I mean, stumbling is an understatement. She goes, "My ancestors came here, you know, from Ireland and were able to da da da. But your ancestors came here in chains." And immediately like boos go like way the fuck
Yikes.
up. Like it was
Yikes. That's
humiliating.
rough.
Yeah. But that anyway, I'm not doing a great coherent example of why Nikita is a great leader, but
I'm sure that was
she's
entertaining. Like, that was awesome to see, though.
it was yeah, it was incredible to see. Um, but she's worth following. She's on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. Also, it seems like she's trying to keep her name under wraps, but her Instagram handle, like her Instagram is public. Soul Type Child, who's kind of become, um, by her own uh, preference, vehement preference, not an organizer per se, but definitely a voice and
Oh, yeah.
right a rightfully unapologetic voice, um, especially as a young black single mother.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but I, time and time again, especially as a sheltered ass white dude, have gleaned a lot from following her. Um, and yeah, to go back to what you were asking, there's definitely still things going down in Seattle.
Oh, I
A
can.
friend of mine was arrested and held over the weekend a couple weeks ago because he was
Yikes.
completely falsely charged with assaulting an officer.
Wow.
And I think the takeaway his wife had was that they, and by the way, you know, not that she wouldn't trust her husband to like not be an idiot, but she reviewed extensive video footage from people who were all filming in the area. Of course, he did nothing. Um, but I think the takeaway is, and he wasn't, of course, unique in this, but the cops basically escalated the charges uh, to basically give them cover to hold him multiple nights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Just cuz?
yeah, just cut like shitty strategy like that.
Wow.
Um, I don't know anybody offhand who was arrested this last weekend, but like even someone who I don't. By the way, someone else who I would really recommend um, supporting. He's gotten a lot of eyes on his work from all sides of the political spectrum. But his name's Omari Salisbury. He does citizen journalism. His company is called Converge Media, and you know, I would definitely consider him left-leaning, but in no way would I say he's an anarchist. Nonetheless, he's just like there on the front lines with the camera and has been since like day one of this whole movement. Um, and that dude got like, it's so obvious how SPD is targeting the press. He got obliterated with tear gas and pepper spray last weekend. Like, he's gotten a lot of that thrown his way in recent months, as you might imagine, being where he's been to document. But he this time he literally was posting on his socials like, "Hey, I'm fine, folks. Just so you know, I just like I'm beat. Like I gotta, I've been like you know washing pepper spray off my face and whatnot. Like he's hanging in okay, but like he got a particularly focused payload of
Yeah.
the stuff. So did a you know I guess I would just say a outspoken white ally, Joey Weiser, who's present at a lot of these events. Like Joey got fucking super tear gas last weekend. It's still lit out here, man. Like, as you know, I've temporarily relocated for some health reasons of my own. I'm not in the city proper at the moment.
Yeah.
But not unlike a few weeks ago, there's been like military and SWAT vehicles. Like there was one parked like on my street last week.
Wow.
Yeah. And for anyone still tuning in to my my barely coherent rambling here, if you're unfamiliar with the Seattle Police Department, it should be noted that just before George Floyd was killed, in Minneapolis, and these protests started. The mayor was petitioning. I'll get the government bodies wrong here, but the mayor was petitioning, I believe, the state Supreme Court to lift the consent decree that was enacted as part of a federal probe that the SPD was subject to because of corruption under the Obama administration. So, like, just prior to what happened in Minneapolis, and police brutality and Black Lives Matter really having, so to speak, having their moment in the public eye, our mayor was actively trying to get the what's the metaphor I'm looking for? Just, if nothing else, restrictions loosened. And I'd have to read back up on it, but offhand, I don't think there's been any significant, I mean, of course, there's been some sort of, mandated report on whatever relevant metrics by the SPD to say, hey, we're not fucking up as much. But it's not like there's some grand, event where, hey, the SPD isn't so bad anymore sort of situation happening. I don't doubt that, especially given some of Seattle's demographic and the neoliberal leanings, that the election of a black woman as a police chief was hopeful in some people's eyes, that people could be that reductive.
Yeah.
But that's proven to be bullshit, because there's been, like, actual disinformation peddled not only by our, white mayor, but also by Carmen Best, our police chief. I don't know if you heard about when, during some of the unfortunate gunfire that happened in late night, early morning, certain points during the existence of the Chaz/Chop.
Yeah.
There was, the police alleged that there was a man who died because a crowd of Antifa folks would not let them through to tend to his wounds.
I think I remember hearing about this.
Yeah, and basically, right-wing media was saying we heard it from the police were saying we heard it from right-wing media.
Oh, wow.
And it was completely insubstantial. Yeah. So, there's a reason that Seattle is at the forefront of so many people's minds in so many different areas of the political spectrum. Because on one hand, it's absolutely a complete and total flashpoint still, like, totally exemplary. I mean, and of course has been exemplary of the institutional failure of law enforcement in this country and all that continues to reap. But also, if you want to be positive about it, and I know both you and I and lots of our friends and peers do, very possibly could be the first steps towards major abolishment and change.
Yeah, for sure.
The fact that city like our outspoken socialist council member not only failed to be defeated, months before all this. Like, I was actually visiting our man Hassan the last time you and I got to hang out,
Nice.
IRL. I was sweating bullets the first couple of days there because Shama Sawant, who I'm sure we've discussed before, but she is and has always been an outspoken socialist. She is always the ire of folks from, both liberal and conservative sides, because she's quite a firebrand. Like, she comes from activism. She's outspokenly anti-capitalist, and that doesn't, that rubs some people the wrong way, unfortunately. So what happens, of course, once again, neoliberal forces, especially where businesses are concerned, collude during local elections to back another candidate who, oh, he's white, but he's gay. Like, it's progressive. Just like Jenny Durkin is totally a cop, but she's a lesbian, a married lesbian woman. Like, it's progressive. Like, this guy, Egan Orion, who by the way, one of the largest donors and funders is this total shark of a businessman who opened a pot shop down the street from me on a corner where untold numbers of young black men had been arrested for, you know, menial weed possession and selling charges. So this guy Ian Eisenberg is already pretty hated by a lot of people, but then he pours a ton of money into Egan Orion's campaign in an attempt to defeat our very outspoken socialist councilwoman Shama Sawant, and not even that could hurt Shama's clout, because as divisive as maybe her how she presents her points and her opinions are, she's like gone to the mat for tenants and for underserved communities, and it's like almost what, you know, a representative should actually be doing. But that was amazing, because I remember like getting in, you know, Hassan and I were on the subway headed back to his place, and I was like sweating bullets looking at the early results. But people were saying like, well, hold up, you know, all these other much more diverse areas of the city haven't been fully counted yet vote-wise, and Shama still won. So that alone gives me hope in a time where so many people have been displaced from the city, with how much property value and rental has skyrocketed, exactly because of companies like Amazon roosting here. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
once again, it's all connected. They don't have to pay taxes. Like, we have the most regressive tax system in the country. So, of course, tech inevitably moves here en masse. Of course, lots of young people who already have lots of privilege and college educations move here. Of course, lots of landlords and developers are like, oh, well, now it's time to make our fucking bag. And, you know, in turn, who gets screwed? BIPOC folks. I live on the edge of a legacy neighborhood where it was long affordable. I'm kind of rambling now, but there's just a lot of reasons why Seattle is emblematic of the struggle for what the fuck the future of America is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But so I guess what I'm trying to say is that in the face of everything that is super fucking depressing and difficult to just even wake up and acknowledge, like, every day, there's a lot of people who feel like you and I do, or close enough to it, or maybe could eventually be amenable to it, to really merit hope, and not contrived, meaningless, democratic party hope. Like, actual positive resolution.
Right.
And
I believe so too. I feel the same way. I feel like there's generally, to answer you really quick, Faded Plague, yes, I have got my cheeks clapped online. But to get back to what you were saying, Big Rich Religion Man, I also believe that, especially amongst the younger generations, they see the consequences of what's been done by the current and past state of things, you know.
Straight up. Yeah, I mean, you know, my friend, she went, her dad is not so I guess compassionate to maybe the situation that our generation is in terms of like livelihood, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
And he said something to her once like, when I was your age, I worked this shitty job and it was enough to afford an apartment, a job, and a coke habit. And on one
Yikes.
hand, it's like, that's such an LOL okay boomer moment, you know?
Right.
But also, to be real for a second, like, you gotta hope that someone saying something that will one day think, well, wait a second, why is that? You know, it's not a
Yeah.
transitive one-to-one comparison of back in the day when my dad paid, God, was it 4 grand a year for college?
Sheesh.
You know, it was like a, you know, that was a private, it was a private college.
Yeah.
You know, versus I shut. I'm not trying to flex. I mean, I didn't go to no Ivy or anything, but like, you know, but by the end of it, it was well into the mid and upper five figures per year in tuition alone, uh, where I was going, and that was 10 years ago. Like, you know, for me as someone white as can be and coming from a privileged background, just number one, listening to my friends who don't share those privileges, who come from completely different backgrounds than my own. That's like number one. But number two is on top of that, really thinking about the bigger picture of why things are unequal. You know, you got to hope that on some level, people who are willing to do that work, people have that compassion somewhere, um,
Exactly.
that can evolve and just to evolve to a willingness to, I mean, put in that emotional labor.
You're absolutely right. I think I just found my main character as well at the same time as we were getting to like a resolution to the conversation there.
That works for me. I think I gotta hit some dinner real quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Um,
yeah, we've been talking for a while now. If you want to like take a break or if you just want to call it that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, not to impose on you and you know,
Oh no,
the
it's no imposition.
the
This was like one of the first when so I'm making Wednesday my streaming day. Like Wednesday around like 6, 7, I'll be on streaming for a while, talking about stuff, playing some games, and like yeah. So I wanted to be this to be like centered around like my conversation with you and having you on.
well, I'm down to do this again. You know, like
Yeah, for sure.
you know that I have long enjoyed our deep talks about all these manners of topics in private or with mutual friends of ours. So
For
more than
sure.
happy to do it and benefit the Twitch hustle. You know what I mean?
We got to
Um,
talk about like deep like death metal nerd shit too at some point.
oh yeah. Oh, you know I'm into that
Get
too.
Hassan for that.
And for sure. And you know, all of us obviously have more time than ever. So we gotta link up and debate the best era of iniquity because yeah, real quick, as a teaser for that discussion, whenever whenever we can get that going, like I'm in the middle because you like the last two records, right? Like
I
you're about like Grime and Five Across the
Yeah, I
Eyes
was
and
gonna
shit.
say I won't lie.
And
Like, yeah, I enjoy the early Iniquity, but I'm more of a for sure like a late era Iniquity guy.
yeah, and see, I fucking love Serenadium and Hassan. But I like both eras. Like, there's plenty of times I've like hit the gym or like killed some time at work jamming those last two records. But
Yeah,
I also love Serenadium. Hassan loves Serenadium, and last I mean, hopefully I'm not misspeaking for him. Dude can feel free to correct me whenever, but I'm pretty sure he's not into Five Across the Eyes and Grime like whatsoever. So Iniquity
yeah,
debate is high pride, my dude, high pride.
yeah. Yeah, I think we've had that conversation. I don't think he's into it either. Because I remember when Matt Tarlov joined Untergang, they were talking about how they actually like. I was stoked. I was personally super stoked that uh, the dude that was like part of probably my favorite era of Iniquity was now in one of my favorite newer death metal bands. And Hassan told me that the dudes in Untergang, I guess, like had never even listened to Iniquity really before.
Dude, did I show you there was a Reddit AMA they did in our metal, and I that happened like that was exactly my line of questioning. I was like, how stoked are you guys to have Mats from Iniquity in your band now? And they were like, honestly, he's a really good dude. We just knew him from shows.
What?
Yeah, kids these days. Anyway, yeah,
That's funny.
I gotta use the restroom, and then get some dinner in me. But
Yeah, I'm about
love you, man.
to
We will
do
do this
my
again soon.
first online match for Tekken. I'm about to get my cheeks clapped, but we'll see what happens.
Alrighty, I'm gonna check
Oh
that
yeah,
out while
this
I'm on the
guy.
can, allegedly.
Allegedly.
All right, love you, buddy. Talk to you soon.
I love you too, man. You have a good night. Be well.
Peace. You too.
That was Big Richard Lizard Man. I'll get this one game of online because I think I'm gonna play. I think I'm gonna main Dragonov, and then I'll call it a stream because it's getting 3 hour long stream now. Damn. Damn, this dude's fucking me up. He knows combos. Ah, he caught me. Ah, I'm negative after that move. I gotta remember. Fuck. Uh. It's cause I just need to get into a different mindset when I play this game. I request a revenge match. I think I might be able to beat this guy. I'm also getting used to not pressing any button to block. Just holding back to block. Like Korean backdashing. Now that's when what makes me do the move I want to actually do. Okay. Jesus Christ. Okay. I guess I can't get up. Oh my goodness, I'm trash. I think I'm gonna pick a different character. I don't think I'm as good with this character as I thought I was. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll be on maybe tomorrow, probably not. I don't think I'm gonna be on tomorrow. I have to move. All that you see back there, it's gonna be gone. It's going bye bye. So it's been like 2 years streaming with all that back there. Thanks for hanging out with me and being here through all this for the past few years. It's gonna be a smooth move, I think. It's gonna be a chill move. I think I'm getting a green screen. We'll see about that. It'll be a nice surprise if I can get that going. But yeah, I'll see you on the other side of the first of the month.